take a look at this graphic because it shows you, just a little screenshot of the chart that Donald Trump was showing the public during his speech yesterday. He held up the chart claiming that the numbers on the left represented how much other countries were charging us in tariffs in addition to any currency manipulation or trade barriers. But it's not exactly true. So the US Trade Representative has released the formula that the Trump administration used, and I want to tell you how it worked. So the formula took the US's trade deficit in goods with each country as a proxy for alleged unfair practices, then divided it by the amount of goods imported into the United States from the country. Okay, let's pause for a second. I don't know why Donald Trump is under the impression that it's necessary, it is mandatory that we trade an exact equal amount of goods with our trade partners.
Or you have a trade surplus. That's not necessary at all. Guys, a trade deficit is totally different than a federal deficit. A federal deficit has a whole host of problems if you let it get out of control. And we've kind of let it get out of control. And they're about to add $6 trillion to it through their tax cuts, or 5. Let's see.
What difference does it make?
Right.
Come on.
And Donald Trump added over $8 trillion last time in just 4 years. He broke every record there was. So, but a trade deficit is not the same thing at all. We don't owe them money. It's just an accounting thing. Like, with some countries we have a trade surplus. With other countries we have a trade deficit. It doesn't really matter. What matters is it's not like we owe them money. That transaction already happened, and we happen to buy more from Japan than they bought from us.
Right.
Would we like them to buy more from us? Sure, we would, right?
Yeah.
But it's not like the money piles up somewhere and we owe it. No, those transactions already happened. So he's like obsessed with trade deficits in a way that makes no sense at all.
Right, now the unfairness that I've noticed in the system is when we will import, items or products from other countries, without tariffs at all. But the country that we're trading with, they'll charge American goods that are being imported with a tariff.
Yeah, so that's
a problem.
Yeah, that's an actual problem.
Yeah.
And that might create trade deficits, but the deficit is not the issue in that case. The tariff is because it's unfair.
Right.
Why do American car companies have to get a 10 or 20% or whatever tariff attached to them when they go to China or Europe, et cetera, and when their cars come in, they don't get a tariff. You can make that argument, and I would make that argument on some industries in some areas, especially if it's actually reciprocal. But listen to what Anna just told you. This is not reciprocal at all. This is a completely different made up calculation.
Yeah.
Like no one's ever used before. It's not the actual tariffs they're charging us. And I have a pretty spectacular case of how it doesn't make sense in a minute. And shockingly, it has to do with Israel.
So Financial Times continues to write that the resulting tariff equals half the ratio between the two, resulting in countries such as Vietnam and Cambodia, which send large amounts of manufactured goods to the United States, but import only small quantities from the US, attracting punitive tariffs of 46 and 49% respectively. By contrast, the UK, with which the US had an equal surplus of goods trade last year, will be hit only by the baseline 10% tariff that applies to all countries barring Canada and Mexico. And then there's one country that's absent from Trump's list of tariffs, and that country is Russia. According to Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, that was because sanctions on Russia preclude any meaningful trade. The value of US-Russia trade plummeted from around $35 billion in 2021 to $3.5 billion as of last year. But the US trades more with Russia than other companies that got hit with the tariffs.
So like countries like Fiji have less trade with us than Russia does. Russia still has 3.5 billion. There's a whole bunch of countries that have less trade. So if you were saying, well, it was de minimis trade, so that's why we didn't bother hitting Russia with tariffs.
Right.
That's not really true because they did a lot of other countries that did. By the way, apparently Russia sends us a lot of fertilizer, which some logic behind. They are sending a whole load of crap to us in a couple of different ways. But it's also important to our farmers. So by the way, there are real potential reasons for excluding Russia from the list, to be fair. One is that he's threatening further tariffs in the peace negotiations. So he might want to reserve the sanctions and tariffs for that venue as opposed to this. Don't mix apples and oranges. And to be fair, he also only did 10% tariff on Iran, perhaps for similar reasons. Okay, now, fair is shown America. Get a load of this. So we tell you all the time, Israel controls Trump and Biden, and we always give them endless checks and cheerleaders for their war crimes, etc. But in this case, we found an instance where Israel does not control us. Hey, so let's report that as well. But it also shows the absurdity of these tariffs, that they are not at all reciprocal. So a couple of days ago, Israel decided that they were going to cancel all their tariffs.
They were tariffing American goods being imported into their country.
I mean, already that's like outrageous.
It is
After
outrageous.
all that we've given you,
Yeah.
$300 billion in US taxpayer money. But they had tariffs. But okay, but fair is fair. They took them off 2 days ago.
Right.
Like they thought, oh, well, number one, we don't want tariffs from America. Okay, and number two, we don't want Americans to realize we've been tariffing them the whole time. Anyways, but good move, and we'll take it, right? And so I thought for sure that Trump would be like, oh, did I leave Israel out? Oh my God, but he didn't. He actually put a 17% tariff on Israel. So okay, give him credit for independence and a little bit of actual control by America, America first. Again, fair is shown America. Okay, but think about it, guys. If they have 0% tariffs, how could a 17% tariff on them be reciprocal? It's by definition not reciprocal because they're using this cockamamie new formula that they came up with of dividing the trade deficit by imports, and then you come up with that number and then you divide that by half.
Yeah, I don't care. I think that the tariff on Israeli-made goods is too low. I think we should increase it to 100%.
Yeah, look, I think that nobody should buy any goods from Israel as long as they're continuing the genocide and ethnic cleansing in Gaza, and I think that the whole world should do that. But in this case, it clearly highlights that it is not reciprocal tariffs. That's not what we're talking about here. This is an invention of Trump. That's why the numbers are so high. They're like, what? People don't have 67% tariff on us. If that had happened, there would be a giant issue decades ago, right? It's because they invented it out of whole cloth. And as I explained earlier, they're doing a giant nuke with these tariffs to justify the $6 trillion tax cut that's coming. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.